ethics. We've seen in the newspaper over the last 6 weeks articles about he said, she said, who said what, who did where, what, when, how. We need to bring this to a close. Somehow it needs to come to a close so that law enforcement can get on with the life safety issues that present to law enforcement on a daily basis.
Okay. So we're at question number 5, and Paul, this is for you. Paul Kraft, how would you handle a situation where a department vehicle was damaged and the deputy was untruthful about how it happened?
Okay, we're back to the ethics again. A law enforcement officer that is known to be untruthful during an investigation, during any type of investigation, has a lot of difficulty, if not impossible, to function in a law enforcement world. That officer needs to be terminated from the department. The vehicle is a minor thing. Those things can be fixed. I worked in that field for many, many years. The vehicle can be fixed, but the officer needs to be severely reprimanded and terminated.
Frank Klusner.
Okay, well, it goes back to 4 things I think are important for character of a law enforcement officer. That's respect, responsibility, truthfulness, and integrity. So if a law enforcement officer damaged up a vehicle and then lied about it, that would kind of violate most of those things. They're not respecting the property that they have, they're not taking responsibility for it, they're not being honest about it, and it really affects the overall integrity of the agency. So I really think that the disciplinary action would have to be employed in law enforcement. Brings up a lot of different issues, Brady issues and things like that, and more than likely you'd have to let that employee go.
Okay. And so Frank Klusner, are there problems among the deputies? If so, how should they be addressed?
Well, yeah, there's problems among the deputies. I come in, I beat an incumbent, I come into an office, and I inherited, just by its nature, some animosity. And there are problems among officers. There's some competing interests as far as resident deputies, Dillon deputies, as we've all been educated in the newspaper here lately. And again, it goes back to that high stress, emotional intelligence that each officer has to do, and not create for themselves a real negative environment. What you do as an administrator is you do your best to try to support that, to get out in front of it, but when folks aren't willing to listen or take responsibility or dig themselves into such a hole, the hard part of the job then is to have to issue discipline, and that's my least favorite thing to do, and whenever I have to do that, it's just a hard thing.
So Paul Kraft.
You're absolutely right, just by the nature of the job. People don't get along. It happens not only in law enforcement, I saw it happen in the workshop, I've seen it happen all over. And a good administrator would get out in front of it and try to mediate the situation and give some guidelines onto how these people would get together or how they would interact during the working hours. People in general are going to strive to please each other if they're respected on the job. I think that it was best said once when people don't have to like each other, but by hell, sorry, they need to respect each other for those 8 hours that they're on service. And that's something that an administrator needs to get on top of and handle it one-on-one or even in a room with everybody.
Okay. So then, Paul Kraft, what is the procedure? What is the procedure for a citizen to meet with the sheriff in his office?
Oh Lord, the procedure for citizens to meet with the sheriff in his office? I would think that citizen, all they have to do is show up at the front door and want to talk to the sheriff, and that the sheriff was not extremely busy at that time, that he would make room for the citizen to come in and talk. Simple as that.
Frank Lusner.
Well, that's how it works. I have an open door policy. I have citizens come in all the time. If I have time for them, if I'm there, I'll speak with them. I'll speak with people out in the street. We're taking phone calls from citizens. I've even taken phone calls from citizens about this issue. It's the current employee issue it's been, kind of at the forefront. So, I work for the citizens. Those are my bosses. And everybody has value in my eyes, and everybody, I may not I may not always agree, but I'm certainly going to listen to them and listen to their point.
Okay. So this question goes to Frank Lusner. What is the protocol for dispatching a deputy to an incident possibly involving a person with a gun? Has or should a deputy be dispatched without backup?
So, in general, you'd have to, in general, speak, because every incident has its own, nuances and what's going on. But in general, if we're going to a gun call, is it that there's somebody in a park that it looks like they're carrying a gun on their side, then you're not going to dispatch with backup generally. But if we have a subject that's barricaded in their house with a gun and they're making threats at their neighbors, well, not only are they going to be dispatched with backup, but a lot of backup. I'm going to get a call, the undersheriff's going to get a call, and other available officers, possibly highway patrol, if it's close to the city, we'll ask them for help too. And, we'll roll out and we'll try to put the necessary resources on what that particular call is. So, up front, there's a lot of things, a lot of moving parts at play. With dispatch, you get as much information as they can. For the deputy to get that information, for that deputy to make a call, if they need to. We do have some protocols in place on major incidents that supervisors are going to get calls. But again, there's no deputies that I haven't turned down. We've had several of those incidents where I roll out. I'm the first one on scene in a shooting incident. It's not unusual for that, as well as who's ever closest. The sheriff or the undersheriff or the sergeant, they get called out a lot too. And that's the thing about being the sheriff, is that it's 24 hours a day. I carry my phone with me right now, and hopefully I don't get buzzed here to go help out, because our resources are limited, and I'm always good to go.
Okay. Paul Kraft.
As the chief of police, I have a very simple philosophy, that if there was a gun involved, any kind of a gun, if it was even a holster, guy walking down the street, we always send backup. I left my desk many a times to go out and back up not only my officers, but the county officers. If there's a gun call, more than one officer needs to go. And I think the protocol has to be in place to do that. That's where the interagency cooperation comes into play. I told my guys again that, you go out and handle the call. If you got a deputy that's got a gun call, you go out and help him, take care of it. We'll worry about it afterwards. Don't let that be the problem, because I'm the administrator, I'll take care of it. And everybody that responds to a gun call should know that backup is coming to them of any kind.
Okay. Thank you very much. So the next question, first off, is Paul Kraft. Is there a need to improve the relationship between the sheriff's office and other law enforcement agencies? The county attorney's office, county commissioner's office, coroner's office, and the emergency services agencies? If so, how?
The way that I see it, and the way that I've been told by other people, is there is a ton of room for improvement there. First off, starting with the Beaverhead County Sheriff's Office and the Dillon Police Department. There needs to be a lot of cooperation there. They're in the same room, basically in the same room, with little dividers in it, and they need to talk to each other. They need to have coffee together every once in a while so that they can figure out, where's our crimes at, how can I help you solve this, and can you help me solve that? Same with the county attorney's office. The county attorney's office needs to be able to go into the sheriff's office and have a weekly meeting of, okay, I've got this many cases on the table. What can you give me extra to prosecute these, or this is what I need extra to prosecute those. The coroner's office is the same thing. You have to have that cooperation. Many times in the coroner's office on calls as the chief of police or as the assistant chief of police, we've sat and roundtable incidents so that everybody knows what's going on, everybody has a chance to say what they thought was going on, and it just makes a good working atmosphere when everybody can sit down at the table and talk. Yes, there needs to be improvements.
Okay. I'll repeat that question. It was kind of a long one, Frank. Is there a need to improve the relationship between the sheriff's office and other law enforcement agencies, the county attorney's office, the county commissioner's office, the coroner's office, and the emergency services agencies? If so, how?
So there's always a need to improve relationships and communications. And there is some breakdowns with a couple of the entities within the county. There's no doubt about that. And they are, in my opinion, they're politically charged, and some of them are holdovers from 4 years ago. There's been some efforts of boycott and different things where, frankly, I think there was some unfairness going on there. But all the same, I tell my people, and I tell myself too, is that we need to focus on the mission. If the communication breakdown there is there, it's not necessarily because of my failure to communicate. I will keep it professional. And it's just a few entities, and I think that could be illustrated in what this whole polarizing situation with the employee issue that I currently have. But I will tell you, other entities and other sheriff's offices we have great relationships with. We have great relationships with our task force officers, our state investigators. The neighboring sheriff's office, they ask us to come help. We're asked to come help with big events too for other entities, such as the Bobcat games, the Cat Grizz game. We went down and helped out Sheriff May, and he specifically asked us to help him during the eclipse, where they had an influx of about 40,000 people down there on the desert around Du Bois. And then we ended up, handling traffic on the way back that day as it all jammed up. But I have a great relationship. It's just within this area that's been so polarized within the courthouse that has been really tough. And there are some things that when Paul was the chief that he did that also he should take ownership in that polarized those things. There's a directive that he put out in July of 2016 that to his officers that they couldn't basically back up the deputy sheriffs or go outside of the city jurisdiction unless there was an immediate threat to life or serious bodily harm. I think that had an impact on that. There were just those things, a lot of things that contribute to it.
Okay. We're down to question number 10, and this is Frank. What is your stance on balancing Second Amendment rights and public safety?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question because Second Amendment rights are a huge thing. I do believe that we all have that right to bear arms. It's right in the framers of the Constitution had reasons for it, and I think they're valid. But there are laws on the books and certain things for responsible gun ownership. With that liberty comes responsibility. So I've tried to find a balance, as well as we've discussed this a lot. I've discussed this a lot with other sheriffs and that. And a couple years ago, we went out against a bill to just have concealed weapon carry legalized for the whole state. There were a few points on that why I didn't support that fully, and I did talk to several constituents about that because it would seem like, well, you're not, all in for the Second Amendment, but that's not true. There were some reasons, is because there's reciprocity in other states. So if you've gone through the procedure of getting a concealed weapons permit, doing the application, going through the background check and that, you can carry a concealed weapon in a lot of other states. And I think that was important to have. And if we didn't have that with our concealed weapon law in Montana, then we wouldn't have that reciprocity to go into Idaho or such that way. And it also allowed the sheriff to deny those things when there were issues of public safety that were at concern. There have been some folks that have applied that have had issues that have been denied. I've had some that were on the border where I've been able to talk to them and judge and ascertain whether you should do that or not. But pretty much if somebody's qualified for that, I did that too. I really do respect our civil liberties, and that is one of them. I really do believe in upholding the Constitution.
Okay. Paul Kraft.
Absolutely, without a doubt. I support our Second Amendment rights. Very simple question. I support it 100%.
Okay. This is the last question. It'll be designated for both of you, and then we'll go on to individual questions. So, Paul, this is for you. What is your approach to youth problems such as drugs, suicides, and alcohol consumption?
Well, you've got three of the big youth problems in our community. Let's start with the drug thing. We need to work together, the Sheriff's Department, Dillon Police Department, our emergency services, the hospital, any medical centers, and we need to educate the youth on the use of drugs and to get out there and to put a stop to it. Once again, that all takes money and time, and without working together, we can't do anything. Alcohol is basically the same way. That's really a tough one in this community because we spend every Labor Day, we spend, as the Sheriff's Department, approximately $6,000 was the last figure I had for overtime to close down the streets and to allow our people our adults to drink on the streets. I think it sends a mixed signal to the youth of the community. I really do.
Okay. And Frank, your response to that question?
Well, I was very proactive when I come in as sheriff on drugs because there was a meth problem. There's a meth problem. There was one locally and one nationally. Mexican cartels are moving drugs to the oil fields from via Interstate 15. And so really important is to partner with other people. And I agree with the partnership with the Dillon Police Department. And we've done our best to, when we have cases that overlap and coincide, that we work with them with that. But we do a lot with the task forces, especially the one that Beaverhead County is a member of. And Mr. Kraft, when he was chief of police, he pulled out of the Southwestern Montana Drug Task Force. So Beaverhead County's been footing the whole bill. We pay about $10,000 a year to support that task force in itself, which has got about 4 agents in it now, as well as the work that we do. And it's not only enforcement, but they also do some work on presentations and such there for youth. But I would like to say that we did, as far as alcohol, we've done 3 major undercover alcohol compliance check operations for the sheriff's office since I've been the sheriff. We're going to try to do another one this fall. There are about 27 bars outside the city limits that we checked. There were a couple that were closed for the season on some of those operations, but each time we did it, it substantially went down by the number of violations we had. I think we started with 7, and the last one we did, I think we had 3 violations. And I think that's done a lot to curb the availability for alcohol for our youths out in the county, because what we really need is we need parents and business owners and all that looking out for everybody else's kids, and not, as a community, we need to approach that. Suicide, I've been very active within the local advisory committee on mental health. I've been on several of their committees as a subject matter expert, and suicide is a problem in Beaverhead County, and especially rural communities. And I can see that I'm running out of time here, but suicide, there are a lot of things that have been done through that community that are very positive. The ACES program, for one of them, I support all those efforts. Building that resiliency in children as they grow up is the most important thing we can do.
Excuse me for just a minute. I need to jump in here. Frank says that I opted out of the drug task force, the Southwestern Montana Drug Task Force, and that is true. That is absolutely true. I was paying $5,000 a year and getting nothing done from those people. I went to my guys in a squad meeting and I asked them, I says, if I pay you the overtime, will you go out and do this drug work? And every one of them said yes. And I'll tell you that our drug arrests in the city limits of Dillon quadrupled. So it was a good decision that I dropped out of the drug task force because we made more progress that way. Thank you.
Okay.
Do I get a chance to respond?